and we've got Peter Nell and Roberts on the call today. And Peter has put together an interesting discussion for us, which is obviously non-technical for this purpose, but talks about where the world is at and what is going on at the moment. We're living in very trying times. We've seen a massive ransomware attack in the last couple of days with the Kaisia outsourced structures. 1,500 organizations were impacted by that, which is phenomenal. 65 companies they're talking about roughly. And the ransomware figure was pegged at about $70 million. I mean, that is huge. It's the worst one that I've seen in the industry, and I think it's a scary state to be in. So I'm going to ask I'm going to ask Peter to host us and talk to us through what is happening in the industry at the moment. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Rose. Good morning, guys. Welcome. Just a quick introduction from our side. I'm the regional sales head for SADC. I've been with Sophos for, let's say, this is my 13th years down the line. So we've been helping a lot of customers like yourself to have an open discussion. Where you are today, we have to adapt as often as what we can, and we have to evolve. So the content for today was built on a lot of factuals. I want to put it out there as well. So Sophos decided we want to do independent research across 30 countries to have a global view, what's happening with ransomware, what's happening with IT operations. So it's not just about cybersecurity, it's also what's the impact to you guys as a business and what you guys, what changes came across from workload, from new type of variants of risks, working remotely has changed every single one's life. Day to day. So especially with COVID, there's so many changes that came across that we all had to adapt. So I think that's a challenging part. So today it's very relevant. I don't want to do them by PowerPoint. I want to keep it close to your business as possible. We'll open for Q&A afterwards. So let's look at the presentation and what the outcome was. And just to please make notes as we go through. We will definitely have a strong Q&A afterwards. You guys can ask any relevant questions. So we spoke about, we've done a survey. So this was, make sure this was independent. We actually contributed this over to a company called Ransomware. So to give an idea, so we had to start with 30 countries. We had to include all the major countries for Sophos. And South Africa is a huge income for Sophos as a country. So we had to include us as a dedicated country to have a dedicated data that will display to you guys as well. So 5,400 decision makers. I'm talking about C-level. So now let's say we are a hacker. Okay. Normally with a hacker, we will have a database. So let's create a scenario that as we go through the presentation deck, I want to show to you guys that this is now a database that a hacker might have got. Let's say 5,400 people. And what was the outcome of income to him? And what was his results at the end of the day of a general survey? Okay, so with that, we have to split as well the data to make sure it's relevant for SME, mid-market, and also enterprise. We see enterprise for SA about 5,000 users. Yes, we do have customers up to 40,000 users in the country, but for this survey, we had to cap it at some point. So keep in mind, there's 50% of the employees of the survey was between 100 to 1,000 user size companies, 1,000 upwards of about 5,000. So then we had to also look at different sectors because some areas, for example, the financial sector, government was always been a high focus for hackers because there's a lot of financial gain or disruption gain. There's normally those two mindsets with a hacker today. There must be a gain that he will have. This will be a personal vendetta, will this be a financial gain for him? But most likely it's going to be towards to grow his personal income. That's the main purpose. And this was the findings from a global point of view. So out of the 5,400 companies, 37 of them has confirmed. Listen, we were hit with ransomware last year. To give an idea, out of 5,400, that means just under 2,000 companies were hit and confirmed. Listen, we were hit with ransomware. Openly, they communicated this. So out of this 37%, the 2,000 odd, 54% of these data, of these users, they were actually succeeding in encrypting data. So there's a lot of different entry points in the company. So it's not ransomware is not necessarily the entry point. It can be starting with a phishing attack or some form of malware, but it's part of the attack chain. So as long as they've got an entry point and they can go and do a call home, they can change that malware or a phishing attack to a full-blown ransomware attack. So this was the ransomware findings after infiltrating and converting from a malware or a phishing attack to a ransomware itself. That means 1,100 people or companies, data was actually encrypted. Let's say in the last year. So this is very the data was compiled in February this year. So it's very new, relevant for everyone that's on the call. So 32% of all this, let's say up to 54%, actually pay ransom at the end of the day. So when you get hit, now you're sitting there backwards listening. If you get hit, listen, we'll do whatever we can to do backups. And we have backups in place to restore. The problem is hackers they know this by now. Okay, it means they will load some form of malware sitting on your cloud backup as well. That means when you do a rollback, and that means they're still there. The hackers are still there. We've seen this with a local case. Remember that City Power for Gauteng was down for like 2 weeks. Their systems were down. Luckily, we still had power, but we were load shedding. But with this process, they actually got in. They were sitting on the backups for almost 18 months, just sitting there, idling, without doing anything. When they were ready to capture and to convert to ransomware, they knew they're going to get a big payout. And yes, they did pay. They said they did pay. But 32%, that means 345 people out of 5,400 people actually paid ransom. And it's maybe not a big amount of people, but if you look at the total revenue income to the hacker, that's a scary part. So 65% of everyone could actually go and restore data. Okay, they had certain pillars in place of layers of defense that make sure they can do a rollback. That's correct. But 121 of the 5,400 companies that paid ransom, and the average cost of let's say a payout was $170,000. So that means just doing a database of doing an attack of 5,400 people, they made a profit of $20.5 million. Okay, to give an idea, that is an easy day's work for them, because they can go and create a database. They can buy a database online, dark web. That's why it's a massive industry. It don't feel that ransomware is going to go away in short term. It's not even close. The first version of ransomware that actually hit the market was with 2017 with Pitcher, WannaCry virus. So after that, everyone just adapted. They knew, listen, this is where the industry they want to focus on, because it's a big income. So the average hacker of age 2015, we're talking about when ransomware just started, was the average age was 17. Is the average age of youngsters that actually went to go and create viruses. So the average hacker today is between the age of 20 to 30. That means those guys has been maturing for the last 5 to 10 years. They've been growing into this industry. That means it's not going to go away. It's the dark web is growing with 70% year on year. So just believe me, it's definitely going to be a focus point for any business today is to have. So talking about that's just from a ransomware point of view. Okay. Now from an IT team experience, from your IT team, what is your experience and growth in the last year? Because we had to adapt with working from home securely, you had to go and create more scalable and flexible processes. But doing that, you also have much more risk doing that, because anyone that's in IT, they know the more complex they make the network, the more endpoints you'll have, and the more vulnerable you are. That they increased. The workloads increased over the 2020 for that main purpose, because they had to adapt. So I was sitting with a lot of governments, and there's a lot of, let's say, the financial sectors from the banking side. They actually approved cloud, because in the past we all know they were all stuck in their ways. Listen, we have one on-prem, it's our control. But with this pandemic, they had no choice to approve cloud because they couldn't work, they couldn't function. That means cloud's got a massive impact to what we do. That means every single thing that we have on a business needs to be connected for us to mature and to evolve. But while we talk about evolvement, is think about your own business. You can go global tomorrow, if you think about it. If you have the right systems in place, you have a great product in place, you can go to public cloud and become global. We see this more and more often taking place in our regions. Companies just exploding because they get global exposure because of going cloud. But with that comes a lot of risk. It comes a lot of back-end, more operations, IT operations. So from a cybersecurity workload, it's increased with 70%. The reason is, think about your own business. What did you do to work remotely and to make sure that's securely? Because now you've got a VPN in between. You have to use the VPN to connect to my systems. But you never know from the endpoint layer, what are they up to? Because they're sitting on their own Wi-Fi hotspot. That's a massive vulnerability for any business, because that connectivity is out of your control. That means that is going to be a big risk for your business. Also, from a cybersecurity point of view, we also seen that more and more companies are making the right investments towards cybersecurity. They've got no choice. Because of governance, compliance, we recommend you guys also as an industry or as a business, make sure that you invest in your staff, especially with Popia that's currently live in the market. But with that, we need to make sure the skill development is going to be key for you guys to stay on top of IT and IT needs. Also from the cyber attack, the complex behind it, most businesses stipulated, listen, the current IT teams is not enough. The products we have in place is not enough. We have to make sure that we have to have it is outsourced, or we have to give it to a specialized partner, like for example, First Tech, to help us to monitor from a SOC point of view, or from a SIM with SOAR platforms, or from artificial intelligence to manage the business. This is becoming a much bigger need for us today, is to say, listen, whatever we put in place is not enough, because the human element is still the biggest risk. Think about your business. You can have the best firewall in place, you can have the best endpoint in place, but they don't communicate, and that's the biggest problem. That means your human element is going to be your biggest risk. If you look at the stats from what they're looking for, if a hacker infiltrates a network, now they're into the network, the first thing they go for is to look at who are you, what is your current skill set. Are you most likely is going to be a clerk, it can be a receptionist, it can be a PA, but that is what they want. They want to get to your receptionist, they want to get to a PA level, because they know those users most likely don't have all the understanding of skill, what you click on or not to click on, but they've got a lot of rut into the business. They are a high risk in the business. You have to make sure you've got the right skill and the right level. That comes back to you as the IT team as well, to educate. To bring this down to a local level, okay, to South Africa, this is the SA stats only. From the 200 users, from 200 businesses, this was the actual stats for SA only. So this means it's relevant, it's us, everyone on the call, we are part of this number. Okay, so 24% of the individuals of the 200, 48 companies were hit with ransomware. That means almost 25% of every single business in the country, you can stipulate, is went through the exact same thing. So 21 of them was successfully encrypting data. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be part of the stats, because if you think about it, now with Popia coming to effect, you have to make a global knowledge, well, I would say global, but public knowledge that you lost data. That's going to damage your brand. There's a brand that you guys build up, the passion that you guys have your business. That's where the impact will be ultimately. You will have a loss of income, loss of customers, and you'll damage your brand overall. And that's not even the fines we can talk about Popia. Okay, so we have to be careful when we lose off data in any ways. So the average payout for ransomware was $450,000. That's a big number. Okay, that's just a recovery. That means out of this 21 people, they had to spend $9.5 million just to go and have a recovery cost of the ransomware attack. This is us, local companies. This displaying this data. Very careful. Okay. Also, we spoke about cybersecurity workload. Because we're working remotely, if you think about your own household. You've got kids running around. They all have to do their own schoolwork. Now they have to do this remotely. Most likely, most citizens today don't have multiple different laptops in the house. They have to use your laptop to do online schooling. Those applications, what they utilize currently, is not always going to be the most best practices. So that means your workload definitely has increased. That means when there's an attack, you currently have to do remote work, remote assistance, because of, again, COVID rules. That means there's a lot of one-on-one discussions to try to rectify what's happening on a machine sitting out of your environment. That's where the workload is definitely increased. Okay. Also, most people today, we actually did a local end customer discussion quite recently with all the government. We were part of one of the CISO discussions where they all had all the CTOs and COs and also the compliance officers in one room. One of the discussions was about what is their investment going to be for long term. They said the next 5 years, but that's not for 2023. Every single one of them, so this stipulated, we have to invest in cybersecurity staff. That's going to be our focus. Even CISO stipulated, we have to increase our current understanding of type of attacks, having a specialist, having a cybersecurity proactive threat hunter, if possible, in the environment, because this is going to be needed long term. If you look at what happened from 2017 all the way was spent on ransomware, you have to protect your business, and that's the only way to do it. You have to be looking, constantly looking for updated unwanted applications, looking for proper patch management in place. The tools that you get from vendors is great, but you still have to enforce it. I think that's the most important part. That means we're still at risk. So that's not from a ransomware, from an IT operation standpoint. Something that we see as the biggest concern. So in the last week, we had more than 5-6 customers that reached out to us and listening, please help us. We got a big challenge. We got a risk and vulnerability. And when we're doing investigations, most of them, I'll say out of the 6, we had 5 of them was attacked with the exact same technique I'm going to display to you guys now. So this is called a Paleomorphic Malware. This is a very dangerous process that's currently taking place. A Paleomorphic Malware is designed as a silent listener. It's a silent malware. It looks like a normal file being transferred from a hacker to a mail. You know, those normally you get those Friday mails, cat smiling, yay, Friday. What happens? Most people say, let's go and share that. And this is just reality. People go and share it. We're all human. The human element's there. And they will go and create social engineering towards that to make sure that you like this mail, you want to share it internally. But normally with that, you don't know where the destination or where this mail was created. And when you actually open an attached file or when you actually share it on, in this process, they will actually download a small packet based on the script, sitting in your network already, bypass a firewall, because it's designed to do that. Now it's already sitting with the user and only activates when the user is actually actioning anything on it. That's the problem. So let's say now I'm a hacker. Now keep in mind the age is between 20 to 30 users. Zapier is a great platform where they actually stipulate on the growth of let's say the youngsters, because keep in mind as well, we're not born into this industry. We are still doing, from an IT team, we're doing whatever we can to stay up to date. So the youngsters today we have to listen towards, because they were grown into this industry. It's a big difference. If you think about, I remember my school days. I was in standard 8, that's grade 10. I went to go and create a virus. I remember this is still the love bug virus that came out, and I deployed this into the school network. So at that point, it's actually taken fire, went to all the networks, everything just collapsed. But that's exactly what the youngsters are doing today, isn't it? Because think about their environment. They're not there to go and make money off it. They're just there to go and experiment. And they don't know what they're experimenting. They just going to execute. And that's where most of this virus is actually coming from. They can do this in the dark web. If you know anything about the dark web, it's a very dangerous place. But all these tools is coming available at no cost. So that's why there's such a big spike from youngsters that's doing this, because they can get themselves skilled. They don't need a lot of understanding of coding. All those tools are really available. They can just go and execute it if they have that database. That's the reason why it's such a big complex and such a big challenge. So the first thing they do, they've got a database. Now they've got this 5,400 companies database that we spoke about. Now they're doing this APT attack that's sitting there with Paleomorphic Malware infiltrating. Now they've got into a network. The first thing they normally go for is always going to be a webcam. We're all sitting here communicating over webcam. The problem is my laptop today doesn't display to me that my webcam is on. So most likely hackers today, the first thing they do is they go for the webcam. And because the purpose is that because they won't see who you are. As simple as what it is, they won't know who you are. And as soon as you walk away, go and do something else, make a cup of coffee, take a bathroom break, go for lunch, whatever that might be, they will follow the next process. They will do the call home process. So when they do a call home, normally when you have a strong endpoint, you can have Sophos, you can have semantic, whatever flavor you want. But at the end of the day, as soon as you do a call home, you will normally have a pop-up on the right-hand side of your endpoint stipulating, listen, you were vulnerable, call your administrator. But with the call home process, while you're walking away, that message disappears in about 15 to 20 seconds. That's the sad part. And the hacker knows this. He will go and clear his footprint. What we mean we're clearing his footprint, he will go and that whole communication about the endpoint, making that alert, he will wipe it out completely. That means there will be no footprint of him being on the network. And he can almost do whatever he wants, because it depends on your rights as a user. If you're an administration user from an IT team, you can actually get to anything on the network. It can be IoT, it can be a mobile device, it can be your local service. He can go and explore what he wants. If this is a business that's relevant to me, it might be a bank, it might be an insurance company, whatever type of business you are. Think about what his personal gain will be. He can use your data against you because the IP belongs to you. IP is the new gold, and the hackers know this very well. He can steal data, that's what he wants. They will run the sniffer on the network, see, I understand what data you have, who you are. So keep in mind as well, this hacker never knows who you are because they're doing this in the mass shotgun effect, and mail effect. They will only know who you are after they actually start investigating, running sniffers, doing exploit techniques on your machine. But this is not a ransomware yet. This is still an entry point from a phishing attack coming in, or a simulation attack, or some form of malware attack is sitting there. And after you investigate who you are, I can start stealing data as what it wants. And worst part of behind this is it can go and create your network as a partner army. Because for them to go and do a brute force attack or DDoS attack, they will definitely need an army of pieces to be able to do that. To go and do a flood attack on a network, to collapse a network, they're going to need an army for that, and they will be using network for that as well. Or we see crypto mining that's still taking place in a big scale. Normally you see on a network, everything's just going slower and slower, and you think it's technology, or you're overutilizing the CPU, memory. This is where hackers are quite clever. They will use your power of your machines to do something else. So be really careful. So will a firewall help you in this process? Thanks. Most likely not, no. If you have a standard firewall without having a sandbox environment, most likely they will bypass your information. And the problem behind this is Ssl Inspection. Most of the data that's coming today is encrypted. More than almost 90%. I think the last stat we had a look at was 89% of traffic that's taking place on the network today is encrypted. So what it means is if you have a normal firewall without having a sandbox and Ssl Inspection on it, you will be very vulnerable to these type of attacks because you won't pick it up at all. So with this process, with an endpoint or with a firewall, you'll be vulnerable between me and you. But from Sophos side point, we can definitely help. So this is something that we've been highly focused on, helping customers. So keep in mind as well, from our side, I want to bring across to say, listen here, we understand your issues, we understand your challenges. We are there to help. I think that's the most important part. We don't want you guys to feel alone. We got expertise in the field. Like First Tech, they've been with me for many years. They're one of our platinum partners. That's why we're in partnership. We're truly in partnership. But with that, we want to have some form of discussion with you guys. We can do a health check in the environment. We want to see if where we recommend, we'll be as neutral as possible. I think that's the most important part from my side, is that we want to build trust with our customers. Because if you have trust between customer, partner, and vendor. We are more strategic. We're not just a product. We're there to help one another. We want to be part of your strategic discussions to help you guys to defend against these type of attacks. That's very critical. If you don't have the right vendors in place, you will have, if you have whatever flavor of firewall you have today, whatever endpoint, if they don't be able to share data, you will be vulnerable to a certain degree. And so you have to be very careful. So with a signal security, I'll touch base on it just now a little bit more. But signal security, this is something that is a concept that we created many years back. This is where our firewall. So if you know anything about Sophos, we specialize in the network side, and we also specialize on the endpoint front. So it's not going to be a 5% endpoint, but our main focus is firewall. We actually have a very even split of a business between firewall and endpoint. And one of the reasons why that's very key for us is because we believe every single entry point, every single device that connects to your network must be secure in every single way possible. So that means we actually created a communication stream between all the product stacks that can share data and communicate. Let me give you an example. We all sitting now mobile remotely. We all in our own Wi-Fi hotspot, sitting in our own home offices, whatever it might be. So, but we also do torrenting. We're in IT. Okay, I'm openly telling you, we're in IT. We do torrenting. We're watching movies. We everywhere in the website. That's what we do. We love technology. That's what we do. But with that comes vulnerabilities. Now, let's say you've got a firewall in place. Let's call this a checkpoint device. Now you've got a Sophos endpoint sitting on the machine. As soon as you get back into the network or do VPN, you're back on the network itself because we have to go to the office at some point. The first thing that's going to happen, your AD will cross-check who you are. Yes, you have rights. Great. I will tell the firewall to approve you to connect to my network. Great, no problem. But the problem is the firewall has got no idea, or the network doesn't know what you've been doing off the network. That means you will be vulnerable because you will do it as a handshake. You're trusted. Here's your policies. Welcome to the network. But in reality, you've got no idea what's running that machine, and you don't know if there's malicious applications or vulnerabilities or malicious attacks is taking place on the network because they don't communicate. There's always going to be a crack in between, and hackers will always going to explore that. So let me change the concept. Now, let's say you've got a Sophos firewall sitting in the gateway level. You've got an endpoint running on Sophos as well. Before you will connect, Sophos will communicate with a firewall. Say, by the way, hello, I'm here. How's it? This is who I am. This is what I've been doing. This is your policies with the firewall. Great. This is your policies. I am still compliant to your policies. Great. You can connect. If you're not compliant to my policies, sadly, I will not let you connect, but I will automatically help you to get compliant. That means we will go and look, do you have any unwanted applications, any vulnerabilities, any potential malicious files? We will go and clean it up automatically without you getting involved. That means we save you a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we can make sure that you always run in a safe state as a network. That for me is much more critical than anything else. Okay, so that means we can keep your network clean. I think that's the most important part. That means these type of attacks, we do protect you on these type of attacks with, I'll say 90%, most vendors do not protect against these type of silent attacks. Be very careful. So coming back to our technology, that is now from creating awareness, what's reality, what's taking place in the market from a hacker standpoint, from ransomware, the state of IT operations. That means it's difficult to be in your shoes. I can tell you openly, it's not the best place to be, but because if something goes wrong in the company, who's there to be blamed? You, isn't it? So that means you're always going to be in the firing range from a management level. And one thing that was always a challenge with IT staff is when everything's running smoothly in the business. Okay, if everything's running, no problems, they will just leave you alone. Don't worry about it. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But if something goes wrong, if there's an attack taking place, most likely they will blame the ICT team. That means your team overall. That's where the challenge and constraint sits. So you have to look at yourself. You have to look at your business, because I see the ICT hub as a business in its own. Because you always have to understand what does the business need, and what do we do from an ICT point to meet that requirement, to make sure whatever that business need is, that is done securely, and also availability, and also the return of investment must be displayed. Because to motivate funds is always complex with the ICT team, isn't it? But with the right tools, the right backing, right motivation, we can definitely help you guys to get it done. So coming back, I just want to get my point out, and I can show you guys this a little bit of what we do. So we spoke about the firewall process. So yes, we have our own unique firewall. Most firewalls today got very similar functions, policies, but every single vendor's got their own niche and uniqueness towards it as well. Okay. So I'm not a billion router. We are one of the global leaders when it comes to security. I want to make sure that's very clear. So from XG, we just launched our XGS models. We got a dedicated Ssl offload chip. I'll explain to you guys a little bit what that is. So with traffic coming in that's currently encrypted, that 89 to 90% of traffic coming in, you need to be able to decrypt and then encrypt back into your network. That's exactly what Ssl is there for. So they're going to look at the files coming in. So before you get in, who are you? What do you do? Let me go and do a deep packet inspection. What you are. It's okay, you are safe. Welcome. You're allowed to come in. I'll always see this as going back to old school. I see this as like a club. Okay. And as a club, you're going to have your boundaries sitting there, and you have to understand who you're letting in. That's going to be your firewall. Your firewall will have to understand who you are before you get in. Keep everyone out, everyone on that stage. To have a malicious intent, keep them out. That's almost what it is. And you can keep the party going. I think that's the most important part. But that's from a firewall front. We can talk about it in more detail in the Q&A. And also from a one-on-one basis, we can tell you guys so much more what we do differently, what's so unique about us. Our endpoint layer is sitting over this side with power from InterceptX. InterceptX is one of the most advanced tool that we have. It comes with almost every single product we have today. InterceptX is our ransomware protection layer. It's the #1 cybersecurity product in the world. I promise you that. If you look at third-party results, if you look at NSS Labs, just displayed that we are the #1 vendor when it comes to accuracy for enterprise business, when it comes to SME, mid-market, and also consumer business. We are seen and rated as the #1 product currently in the world with cybersecurity, with our uniqueness. Okay, so with this, it's not just an AV. A lot of people think as an endpoint is an AV scanning engine. There's so much more than that. So when I talk about endpoint is to monitor your day-to-day activities, from artificial intelligence, understanding what you do as a user, from user behavior change, from file behavior change, from any malicious attacks coming in. Because how we see a malicious attack? Why would a file come into an organization and without a human element controlling that, giving a command to go and do something else? That means there's definitely something wrong with that file because it's got a malicious intent to go and do something else. Sophos has got intelligence to pick it up and track it and understand what it is and then lock it down. Okay. So we also have a purpose-built product for servers. MDM, I want to touch quickly on MDM. This is one of the biggest challenges. If we have to do a survey, I tell you, we're all okay. It's normally Android powered, or it's going to be a Mac, the Macintosh iOS. Who of you guys, for example, the call? Okay, we'll do a quick survey just now about it. But if you think about it, who of us on the call's got cybersecurity and cell phones? Not a lot of us has got that in place. And there's one reason behind it. It's a difficult sell from IT team to sell to the business. The reason is because you have to convince all your users in your network, say, use your private cell phones that you guys pay for, it belongs to you, that we have to load a tracking device on your cell phones for personal business gain and to be compliant to our business. That's really difficult to do because that means you can track what they do, business hours, after hours, and that's difficult. So Sophos taken a different approach. We can go and create different containers. We can say, this container is business, this container is business, private. So the business container is all what we worry about. That's it. So it's a business, because that's my business tools, your VPNs, your Salesforce, your emails, all your business tools you use day to day. We need to make sure it is protected. That's what we do in the MDM. Whatever you do in your private time, your private cell phone, that's up to you, but it's still trackable and traceable, but for yourself. That's not to the business. That's only for the work tools. From encryption, it's going to be a big factor going forward. From file encryption, data encryption, yes, we have that in place. From the left-hand side, we got wireless, we got an email, we got 100% cloud focused. I think that's really important as well. We are next-gen focused. We focus on anything that's next-gen today. From it's connected to cloud, it's something that you can involve. You can something that spend a lot of time towards to make sure it's best practice and top security today. Because one thing that I normally ask a business is, how do you protect against the unknown today? That's difficult to do because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow at all. And I think that's where the challenge sits. You have to think outside the box and have the right technology in place. And every single product we just discussed is communicated to a Sophos Central. That's a dashboard that we can communicate to every single product. They have a single view of what's happening in the business. That's really important to understand. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about, well, two more slides. So then we're done with presentations. We can do more of a Q&A. I think that's really important. So from a detection and response. So from protection, we spoke about Industry X is the biggest engine we have to fight hackers with the right tools. But with that, we have a lot of tools for customers. And also that means EDR is endpoint detection and response, is the terminology that's been used in the market, overused if you ask me. But this is where we will actually give you the power to do your own investigations. It's in the business, it's license-based, but from an endpoint layer, you can do your own investigation, what's happening, what risks taking place. You can do proactive threat hunting on it as well, but you have to do that as a business, okay? Or you can outsource this back to First Tech, the own stock environment that can do that for you, definitely, okay? But you can also run IT operation tasks. Let me give you an example. Let's say, as an IT team, your business tells you, listen, we have to make sure that we are up to date all to Windows 10, for example. So you have to run a SQL command or a understanding of how many machines in your organization is running, for example, Windows 7. We can do this really simple with an easy track of command on SQL to understand what is happening, how many machines, where is the machine space is running on those type of operations. Or you can say, who's running under 4 gig memory as machines, because we're trying to do an upgrade on our technology and also our laptops. All this operation tasks you can do directly from EDR. So from an MTR platform, this is where we can do managed detection and response. This is where Sophos is the biggest SOC company in the world without us making that effort. So MTR is a SOC service that Sophos has, and we will be in line with your partner, First Tech, to say, we will monitor your business proactively. We will have dedicated people to track your data proactively, do proactive threat hunting, data analysis, best practice installations. We will do that for you jointly with your partner. That is services done from us and the partner. And the last thing I want to touch on that is rapid response. Rapid response is when you have an attack taking place. Now, let's say currently sitting there, you know that your business is currently at risk and currently as we talk, it's got an attack taking place. I know that's not the case because otherwise it wouldn't be on the call. But with that, just know when you have an attack, Sophos got a service called rapid response. If you use Sophos or don't use Sophos, we will still have a service for you that we will actually have dedicated teams, ethical hackers that will fight hackers that's trying to encrypt you. We will actually help you to make sure that we recover and isolate them on your network to make sure your impact of loss to the business is minimal. That's what we do. That's a skill set we have as a team. That's really critical to understand. And last thing, the last slide we're going to talk about is POPIA is in effect. Okay. So I have multiple different discussions with the regulator for the last multiple different years. We've been guest speakers at GovTech, we've been guest speakers with ITWeb, any format that you can imagine. We were one of the front runners with awareness on what POPIA is and what does it mean to the business. So governance and compliance is the #1 challenge for any business and RCT team, because there's someone RCT team or as a business that has to take ownership for governance and compliance. Yes, we have seen terminologies come across of new roles for CISOs or compliance officers, but ultimately it's still part of RCT. So you have to have a very wide understanding what it is, what does it mean for the business, and we can help. I promise you, we got so much information on how to be compliant from a cybersecurity standpoint, especially on data protection. We can help you on that. It's not a fee. We're not going to charge you guys to having health checks. It's not what we do. We are there purely to help you guys to understand and what's best practice. Whatever, if you want to go with our solutions, great. Don't go with our solution. At least we have that open channel with you guys that can say this is where you have to improve on. And how, if you want to build a case to water management, we can help you guys to do that as well. Okay, so that's from our side. So over to you, Feroz, I believe.
Get off mute. There we go. Thank you very much, Peter. That was quite informative. I think some staggering statistics and information there. What was scary for me was the fact that from the South African survey of 200 companies, 24% of them said they were ransomware. I don't know if that's now a word. It's become a verb. And total ransom value being 450. Average is $450,000, which is above the average across the world, actually. That's quite a scary figure. I mean, it's a huge concern, and we see a constant increase in that area as well. So yeah, that was quite fascinating. I want to open up to the audience as well, and perhaps ask Mark Roberts as well to come online. He's on the call and turn his video, and we can have a bit of a discussion, see if we can have some questions.
Hi, guys.
Audience, hi there, Mark. And I've got a couple of questions that came up during the discussions as well. And I'd like to ask the audience first if there's any questions from the audience, specifically for Mark, on what is presented. Well, okay, maybe people need a few minutes to think. They can post the question either verbally or in the text chat session. Please feel free to type up your question or just put your hand up, and we will give you a slot. So a couple of things you discussed there, Mark, and perhaps we can touch a little bit on the product side. You mentioned Sophos and firewalls and all kinds of stuff there early on. What makes Sophos firewall special? What is unique about it?
Yeah, that's actually a very valid and good question, actually. So from a technology standpoint, from a visibility, I think visibility of the business is always going to be key. Okay. So visibility, we actually have on the device, we've got 1,200 plus reports to give you that visibility that's not chargeable in any format. Okay. One thing that's definitely going to be a massive plus is going to be visibility to the business, but also something else is going to be, we have dual scanning engines running on the firewall. That means as files comes in, Sophos will have its own engine. We also have a third-party vendor scanning as well. That's always going to be unique to us. We're only vendors currently got multiple different scanning engines of files coming in, and it's not slowing down. It's not slowing down the machine. It's quite light, and it's very accurate. So if one misses, the second AV will pick it up. I think that's really important. From a Ssl inspection point of view, we've got a dedicated offload chip. That means as what encrypt data comes in, we've got dedicated chipset for that can there's a decrypt the files coming in, and also again encrypt it as it comes back in. So from that point of view, we have I'll say that's the front leading end. Plus, it's very high value, cost effective, and it fits the budget, because you have to have additional spend on third party reporting or additional rack space for a reporting module that we already cater for. Okay. Mark, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yes, I'd also like to add, our firewall communicates with all of our other products. So when Peter was talking about synchronized security, the firewall asks all the other products, hey, what's going on? Queries it, and then gets an answer back. So if there's an application it doesn't know, for instance, the firewall asks the endpoint, what application is that? What is running on the endpoint? The endpoint will then give that information to the firewall. The firewall then will decide whether that application is acceptable on that person's endpoint.
Okay, that could you touch on for synchronized security as well? And I mean, it sounds like a buzzword, but it actually sounds quite catchy. And it is, I guess, with regards to malware and ransomware, because it needs to stop that threat in all levels. And you've got multiple components. The one slide you showed with all your solutions covering the areas of mobile device, server, the Wi-Fi, etc., etc. It's quite key that these devices talk to each other. That's my understanding, that talk to each other and they synchronize the conversation in terms of what security actions are required.
100% correct.
100% correct.
So I just want to add to that. So we actually done let's say some stats and surveys in the past as well. And one of the outcomes was that how much time does RCT spend on a challenge of an investigation of a potential risk or a current malware that's currently running that's on a network. It's proven that more than 21 average incidents is taking place every single month. Okay, so it takes about 3 hours of investigation on a single case. That means 7 days out of an engineer sitting on a network, he has to be reactive and defensive to try to go and sort out issues. But with Sophos, because of the synchronized security that's taken place, we can give that 7 days back to the RCT team to be more proactive. So that means there's less strain on the users, let's say as a business with RCT. That means because all the communication is taking place, it's an automated process, we can always investigate and isolate if there's a risk. And if there's a risk, we'll take that user from off the network, we'll automatically clean him up, we'll put him back on the network, and if anyone else got the exact same symptoms, it possibly potentially spread to a different PC or to a different network, we'll also isolate them as well and rectify the problem without anyone getting involved. So that 7 days, we bring it down to 8 seconds. The reason why we say 8 seconds is just for you to go and pull the report. That's it. That's the reason why we say 8 seconds.
Okay, good stuff. I see I've got a hand up from Lucas, but before we hand over to Lucas, I just want to extend that conversation quickly. You mentioned the whole synchronized security component, and that's obviously when something hits your business, your firewall, and internally. What's interesting as well is that you touched earlier on that you've got the email filtering engine. And today, what has been proven is the majority of incidences and malware is through phishing exercises. And what is the role of that email engine in the synchronized security in terms of even preventing that entity arriving at your business?
So sure, Mark, you want to take it forward, or do you want me to take it forward? So you're kind of mute. So I don't mind taking this. So currently from an email security standpoint, you have to be very careful. So most people got their own investments towards a Mimecast solution. Is great. Don't get me wrong, it's good because they're running our engines as well. We've got an OEM agreement with them. A lot of people's got their own dedicated email security that's already sitting in cloud from the exchange coming back into the business. We just an additional layer on top of that. We also will scan every single mail that's actually coming in. So that means all it means is that we got additional layers of defense. So if you look at any business, you have to make it as complex as possible for hackers getting in. So that means different layers of approach. And one of the layers they have to get through is going to be your chosen. If you have a Mimecast and if you can place it, we'll go through there. But we also will want to pinpoint it back to our layer for additional defense as a scanning engine for emails.
Okay, cool. So that's nice. That's stop it before it gets in kind of approach, eh? Good stuff. Yeah. So I want to hand over to Lucas. Lucas has got a question for us. Lucas, do you wanna turn off your mute or turn on your mic and ask your question?
Well, I don't really want to. Sorry, Rose. I just I'm part of the Sophos team, so I don't really have a question. I thought I will share with the audience. I was assisting a client in South Africa this weekend because we pre-sales and we're on the ground. I just wanted to show you what ransomware looks like, an interesting use case without sharing the client's name. And I don't know if you can see my screen here. And I saw we had a question around what ransomware is and why VPNs can't help us against it. And just to give you an idea, ransomware basically encrypts all your files on your machines. You'll get a typical note like this on a TXT file on all your servers and machines. Just looks like this. This is live, by the way. It happened this weekend to another customer, and it's not a Sophos customer, luckily enough. And they get a ransomware note like this. It tells them how to decrypt or how to get the decryption files. This basically tells them they have to use the Monero a Bitcoin type of currency, which is a similar currency to Bitcoin that you have to use, and that's the only way they will trade with you. They give you a trial decryption code, meaning you can upload a couple of your files. All your files will be encrypted, like the ones at the bottom here, and you won't be able to use any of your business application files, literally. And to show that they are legit, they actually give you the opportunity to trial run it to see if they can decrypt some of your files or not, to see if they're not actually just asking you for random money. And you can see here, this equated to, they wanted 45,000 US dollars for the decryption key, which is 640,000 Rand at that time. And this literally happened this weekend. The customer had one Sophos server installed. They were trial running one of our products, and that server was saved by this Sophos Intercept X product. We actually happened to actually just save one of their servers because they were just test driving Sophos as a product. And the other product that they have didn't suffice, and it literally, they had to decided to pay this ransom to decrypt their files, because it is 1,500 endpoints, you know, so it's 1,500 machines that was encrypted. So it's just an interesting use case. You can see here it says that time ends in the July the 9th. They have till tomorrow to pay the ransom. And the funny thing is, people pay this because they're so desperate that they will lose their business, that this is a real business and a real organization. This was part of a major attack that happened in the US called Kaseya, which is a vendor alliance product that, so if any of you on the call are using Kaseya as a deployment software, be aware of this ransomware. It's deployed via the Kaseya platform. They actually hacked the actual backend software of Kaseya, and they've asked Kaseya to pay $70 million to them. Then they will give them a decryptor for all their clients. They infected, by the way, 10 million endpoints because Kaseya is an MSP program. That's quite interesting.
It's in a cybersecurity meeting here now. But they're going talking about, you know, the antiviruses and that stuff, and it's because the stuff isn't updated.
Yeah, exactly. It can be because nothing is updated, or it's not necessarily that other products are bad. Ransomware is just a very fancy way of encrypting tools, and it's very powerful. And this ransomware is also in the wild, meaning it's called HeyPen, which is just the name for it, or the nickname for it. But nobody knows about this ransomware or how to decrypt it at the moment of time, not even Sophos for that matter. So it's just a nice use case. I just wanted to show you that it is real, and South African customers do get ransomware, unfortunately, and it's terrible if your business is in this hold.
So the scary part is we get these type of investigations requests every single day almost, and that's the sad part. So that's why we as a vendor got a lot of visibility to the true impact to businesses. And that's why we always there to assist. And it's good to see that one machine is running in X was the only one that actually survived. And that's a sad part.
Yeah, I've got a question on that, but I'm going to come back to it. Well, Ilse asked the question early on, and Lucas has typed back a response, but I'll bring it up for discussion as well. So Ilse asked that you said that the current general VPNs are not secure enough. Why do secure VPNs not provide us the security we need to prevent us from ransomware attacks? Why does the Sophos VPN work any different from any other VPNs? And Lucas did answer that question, but maybe you can extend that a little bit in a conversation.
Yes, it sounds great. Okay, yes. So just to give you an idea, VPN plays on transport layer, where we say the packet is within transport. So I send you a file from one server to another in a secure manner. But what the ransomware guys are doing, they're not playing on that layer. They don't care what traffic you're sending that's encrypted or not. They start logging onto your Windows machine, and then they can transport traffic within that VPN layer, for example. So VPN really only secures us from public access or from snooping of the traffic within. So say you want to send me a file today, Feroz, we can create a VPN between myself and you can send me the file in a secure manner. But what the ransomware guys are doing, they're playing in a better layer where they actually start installing applications within on the machines. And most of these applications, unfortunately, still spread via email, funnily enough, because 65% of that applications that get deployed, malicious applications on your machine, is basically deployed via email. And what they do is they obfuscate files like MS Word, or especially Adobe. Adobe is very prone for this, is they rename their file to adobe.exe. And then antivirus programs run those files because it's already executable. So VPN is something that's part of the tiered, how can I say, security layer approach. But it's not a full bank suite. You still have to protect the endpoint as well. So security is a layered approach. You have to look at the network level. So you need, if we talk security, most people will say, put their hand up and say, what is the first thing you need for security? And they'll say, I need a firewall. That's what people think. That's the perception. The problem is when users are sitting at home, they're not using that firewall anymore. So now what now? So you have to protect the endpoint machine as well with some set of software that sits within that endpoint. Because now what we've seen with this ransomware specifically that I just showed you as well, they didn't encrypt the user servers that the servers can't boot up. They don't care, the server can boot up. They're happy that the server is in production, but there's no files on the server that's usable. They've encrypted all the files. So the transport layer is still secure via VPNs and stuff, but they've actually had access to the Windows server where they actually encrypted all the files. So they're playing on another layer now. They don't care about VPNs anymore. Yes, it's good to have it and you secure your packets within transport, but these guys are going to try and send you a phishing email, and they only have to catch one person. They have to catch the receptionist or the accountant or the HR lady. It takes one person, and then they can what we call laterally move within your organization. So once they've on that person's laptop, and it actually poses a higher risk if that person then VPNs in, because when they VPN in, they actually have more power. They have access to all your servers. So if I give my laptop to my 5-year-old son and he happens to put malware on the machine and I VPN into Sophos's network, I in actual fact give the ransomware guys or the perpetrators access to the entire Sophos network. So it's actually a higher risk to have VPNs in a certain sense if they have installed software on your machine. So that's just the answer around it.
Okay, wow,
that makes sense.
That's a lot to digest there, eh? Yeah, so back to the audience again. Are there any other questions from the audience? People are very quiet. I'm sure there's a couple of questions floating around people's minds. They just haven't aired it. Please feel free to put them forward. Now, Lucas, you mentioned something very interesting there, and thank you for relating the global bridge to a South African entity as well, because we sometimes forget. We see these things in the news and it's $70 million, and we think, well, okay, whoa, it's serious business, and it's in the US. But this is global customers who were affected, and you've indicated one in South Africa now as well. But you also came across something, you mentioned something very interesting, was that the only server that wasn't affected was the Sophos server. Now often we speak to customers, and there's a lot of brands of AV products out there, antivirus products out there. I mean, we're not going to mention any names, but there's a lot of them, and a lot of good ones as well. And often when you speak to a customer, no, we've got AV. But what I'm getting a sense of here is that you get AV, you get malware protection, you get ransomware protection. And the question to Peter is, are all AV clients, all AV applications equal?
You know what? From my responses, not all, no. So you have to be very careful when you select your AV engines. And it's not just the AV engines. For me, it's more about the ransomware itself. So currently, there's certain techniques for exploit. There's 35 techniques globally known how to exploit. That's to date. And most of those vendors, they will advertise themselves as if we've got a ransomware layer. That means it gives you some form of security. The problem is that's not always the case, because they might only cover 20 of the 35 techniques. And most ransomware attacks today is being built between 4 to 5 techniques in one ransomware attack. So if your let's say endpoint misses, let's say one of those techniques that it can infiltrate your network. So you have to be very selective when it gets to an endpoint layer, especially working from home securely. You've got almost no choice. So I know it's scary. I think one of the points that came across in the chat now as well, one of the comments, it's scary. It is. So it's more of one battle that you guys always face is going to be make the investment or settle the risk. But sitting with the risk, it's not that would keep you out of bed every single day. I promise you that. So it's almost coming back to like in selling insurance. It's going to be, I need cover. That's why we have to make the investment. So in case this happens, we have this in place. So it's always going to be a mindset in a game that you have to play internally with your teams. So listen, we have to get this as insurance for us as a business in case we get it back. But just to come back to response, is every single endpoint is different. Okay, they've got different ways it was built. It's different. So we use a lot of artificial intelligence to give an idea, to give you some more scary stats, just to back what we're stipulating. There's 400,000 new malware samples that we see every single day, brand new, that's never seen before. So this is from our Sophos labs where big data comes to one single place. So to protect your business against that unknown of 400,000 new malware samples and viruses that's coming across, that's the risk. That means that's the entry point. That is what you have to ask yourselves, the business. Do I have the right security backing me? So my response is, everyone's different. You have to understand what's the best fit for your business. Definitely.
Okay. But what you're also saying is that you get AV and then you get your anti-ransomware components. And AV is not anti-ransomware. They're two different things.
Correct.
And I think most people don't understand that there are two different applications to a large extent.
Yes. So normally AV is a small part of an endpoint layer. So you normally get to, remember in the past, about 5 years back, you had an AV scanning engine and that was your security. But everything's evolved. Cybersecurity every single day, because of the massive amount of vulnerabilities that's coming across, endpoint has evolved. That means it's no longer just tracking AV scanning. It's also about behavior of files. We're looking at human elements coming across, artificial intelligence to track file behaviors. That's going to be most key when it gets an endpoint layer. And that's exactly what we do. It's not just about the ransomware, but also to track what's actually happening on a human element on the desktop at any point. That means you always need like a full UTM firewall on an endpoint today. And that's exactly what we can do.
Just to jump in there, sorry, Peter. So a few years ago, we always used to talk about AV, and always used to be signatures. You know, known signatures, known things, viruses that we've known about. And later on, it's now developed to a point where there's zero-day attacks. So we don't know those signatures. It's complete unknown. That's where Sophos came to the party. And that's where Intercept X came in. So it uses behavioral analytics. It looks at all those entry points that hackers use to try and get on. And it monitors those. And as soon as that behavior changes and it looks a little different, Sophos goes, well, stop here. Something is not right here. Let's take a deeper look. Let's reverse that process and fix it all up and put them back on the network again. So it's signatures nowadays. It's no one needs to do that anymore because these are all known things. You know, we've been blocking all that stuff for years. It's the unknown that we need to stop and block.
Yeah, I think signatures is old school. If you still have an endpoint or AV running on signatures, the problem is, so with a signature, that means you have to find a known virus to build a patch for that known virus. That means it's a signature. And if that's the mindset, imagine 400,000 new malware risk coming across. How are you gonna patch that at a high rate? There's no way. So we'll always fall behind. That means you as a vendor will be vulnerable to your customers. So you have to be very careful.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Feroz, you go.
No, there's another question on the board, so I wanted to give John a chance to raise his question. John?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, it's not a question, it's more sort of a statement. I think as the ICT department, the challenge has always been having enough resources to do the job. Because there's always this battle about how many people is enough. I mean, our strategy has always been, we need to automate as much as possible. So cybersecurity for us is a holistic approach. It's not just endpoint security, it's got to be everything. And I mean, if you look at big organizations, the amount of security staff they have employed that actually have to sit and manually check. And I think that's where the product we're currently using is actually giving us an advantage, which is Sophos. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. So there was a question there by Barry, which I think Lucas has responded to already, but I want to bring it up for discussion as well, because I think it's important we talk about it and drill down to the details. So Barry asked if an organization is already running Intercept X Advanced, which is for both endpoints and for service, which is your product, across all the endpoints, running a third-party enterprise-grade firewall, so another good firewall. Realistically, how well are you protected from malware and ransomware?
So definitely. So Lucas, you're more than welcome to take this from a technical point, but from a sales point of view, we're always going to motivate to have that ecosystem as a security. So one thing that we just spoke about is automation, isn't it? So automation, whatever you can automate in the business, that must be the focus. So from Jay's statement, 100%. So from a ecosystem, when we talk about ecosystems, when the products communicate, the signal security is a concept, that means you have a system that will control and assist. So that is from my point of view. If we can motivate having an ecosystem that's going to be best practice for your business, that means we can't communicate, say, with a third-party firewall. We can't do that. So you will actually miss that complete layer of ecosystem that's not there. You really have one portion of the product to be able to make it happen. That means if you want to have the ecosystem in place, we have to replace that firewall as well to have a Sophos firewall in place. You'll see a huge difference of visibility. Let's say less more from an approach, but will be a much more as an automated, secure approach, much better hygiene to the business, and also less. The return of investment will be you can make sure that all teams is proactive from a cybersecurity team, because you don't have to go and fix every single incident that's coming across. That's just from an operation, from my point of view. But from a technical point of view, I can imagine Lucas got something else to input there as well.
Yes, so just from our point, so I mean, if you're using a Fortinet and Checkpoint, I'll use the names or any other vendor out there. I mean, those are Gartner leader products, so they are very good and they have a sense of protection in their own sense. The only real benefit for moving to a Sophos firewall would be the ecosystem. We call it cybersecurity as ecosystem. And like Gary just mentioned, it's difficult to manage the different products. I mean, myself, I was security architect at the South African Reserve Bank for 5 years. And we had so many dispersed products, like we were using Gartner leader products, right? So we were going for Symantec, we were going for Endpoint and Checkpoint firewalls, IBM Q radar for SIEM tools and so on. And for me to manage those products was an absolute nightmare if I have to find out where did a threat come from. A nice use case, for example, was that one of the internal employees disclosed the interest rate before it was announced. And we had to create a audit trail against this user and take him to court and actually dismiss him. And for me to get all that evidence together was extremely difficult by collating, did he go to this firewall, did he log on to this device, did he Gmail it, did he put it on OneDrive and so on. So I had to use like 50 dashboards almost to find this information. And the ecosystem is if you use one vendor for everything, all those products talk together. So to do audit traces and find vulnerabilities is a lot easier. Our firewall is not 10 times better than Fortinet, so I'm not going to lie to you, but it is very nice in terms of if you have one IT personnel or you have a security team that needs to learn one vendor product, that's really where we're keen, where we really play and really win, because our firewall can also isolate endpoints, like Mark said, in terms of if there's ransomware or something like that on the estate. Barry also asked about the EDR product, and the EDR product really it's not going to give you extra protection against ransomware, I'll be honest. Our ransomware protection, the way we protect against ransomware, a little bit of secret sauce from Sophos' side. We have an encryption product, and we play in encryption against encryption. So what ransomware does, it actually encrypts your files. And we can see that with machine learning, because files grow in size when they get encrypted. So a 1 meg file will become 4 megs within minutes, for example, or a 200 meg file will become 1 gig within minutes. So what we do is we encrypt the files in another space on your disk, and that's really our last line of defense. And when the ransomware is cleaned up, we decrypt it. So we call our tool a ransomware rollback tool. And none of the other vendors have this in place. But this is a absolute last line of defense. What I mean by that is machine learning didn't pick it up, signatures didn't pick it up, it's ransomware in the wild. And that's what saved this guy, one server of this customer of this use case I showed you. It was CryptoGuard, our product called CryptoGuard, that's within InterceptX. And that product gives you the ability to roll back from ransomware if it's an unknown ransomware that we've never seen and none of the vendors know about it. So that's basically how we save the day there. And it's something that's very unique to Sophos that we have from the endpoint point of view. And then the EDR product helps you with IT operationals. It helps you with files. Like, I'll use a good example. There's a tool called Advanced Port Scanner that a lot of the system administrators these days use to do reconnaissance attacks or attacks on their firewalls to see what ports is open on servers. Advanced Port Scanner, about 40% of the downloads of Advanced Port Scanner is malicious. There's malware embedded in it. Now, if I'm an Advanced Port Scan user, I'm normally a domain administrator. So it's a very clever way to deploy ransomware or malware or botnets onto machines by asking the administrator to download Advanced Port Scanner and then deploying it, because he has all the rights in the world. So if I can get his account details, I'm very powerful. So that's how these guys are playing the game. And you download Advanced Port Scanner, you think you're going to use it just to look at what ports is open, maybe on a cloud-based server or on your firewall, or you get auditors and they ask you what ports are open, and you download these free tools, and these free tools has infections. Now, EDR will help you expose those kind of tools. That's what the EDR tools is. We call it potentially unwanted apps that we don't want it to run on your environment. So the better you can protect it. So you can download BitTorrents at home, right? Movies, and it won't necessarily infect your network, but some files might be infected and InterceptX will pick it up. But if you can block BitTorrent altogether, that's a much safer way to play, because then users cannot download anything bad from that point of view, because you don't have BitTorrent on your machine at all. So that's just a bit of it on that discussion.
Yeah. Right, cool. I'm not seeing any other questions from the audience yet. I'll ask again if anybody's got any questions. But I've got a question here, which is specifically for Peter. Peter, what is the role of AI in all of this?
Artificial intelligence, yeah, that's a very, very valid point as well. So we have to think outside the box as a vendor, and with that comes a lot of tools and uniqueness. And artificial intelligence has been thrown in the market as a terminology, but the seniors are working with building a trace of files. Like we just spoke about hackers approach coming in. You will need a lot of artificial intelligence to be able to do tracing and sniffing and tracking of what they're trying to do. And that's exactly what we do. We actually do artificial intelligence to use machine learning and also to track on users. So let's say, for example, Mark. We know Mark very well. He's 90. He's been there for many years with me. But suddenly he goes home and is doing, for example, suddenly he's going to adult porn site that's never done before. So that will come to the question is, why did he go to adult content? We've never done it before. So there's a lot of artificial intelligence that will go around, not just for file behavior, but also at the user layer as well. That's done from a technology of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of hidden juice, I will say, that we use as a company. That it's also outside our visibility. That our engineers will have much more details on that we always can't necessarily disclose. But definitely, yes, artificial intelligence is our backbone of getting to the bad guys. Definitely. Okay, good. Yeah, I think it talks back to what John raised earlier on in terms of the automation. You can't have enough people 24/7, 365 days a year staring at screens trying to prevent things from happening. You've got to have some automation and some decision-making capability, and they can't all be rules-based either, because you can't write every rule, you know, and the rules would change every day or every minute, because the threat landscape changes every minute. So, which means you need something that can interpret behavior, and that's where you're talking to. So I was sitting with had a call with a customer on last week Friday. Actually, he had a vulnerability in his machine. He was a massive force. It's almost like a brute force attack on his network. He's using Sophos and Endpoint, also using our firewalls. Keep an idea. He gave me a call about 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. He said, "Listen, please help. Try to help us in whatever we can." And with the whole process, I told him, "Dude, don't worry, we got your back." And I did put him. There's our rapid response teams to monitor it, and I can tell you now, he had no risk at all. So yes, it was quite clear of an attack, but coming back to its automation process, we isolate every single time. I think in one evening, through the night, I think it was almost, let's say, 800 attempts that had tried to breach his attack. It's a 8,000 user network that we currently have, from end-to-end firewalls, APs, red devices, and also our endpoint layers. And all that was recorded, and rapid response team said, "Listen, there's nothing we can do. The product's doing what it's supposed to do." It just shows that we can let IT managers go to bed. Go to bed. Don't worry about it. We got your back. I mean, that's the most important part. Just trust in us, and we trusted the technology. Technology works on its own. I tell you that the automation process behind it, it's powerful. And the only way for you guys to understand that passion we have and that is coming across is to do a POC on it. It's something that I would love for everyone on the call. If you think that this is something that we can improve on, or that you want to see this in action, please book a POC. We're not going to charge you for this. This is a service that we offer back to our customers to build trust. So we got a lot of trust in the product. We know that it works. We want to book some time with you guys to show and display what we can do.
Thank you, Peter. Audience is very quiet today. Maybe everybody's just sipping coffee, but hopefully people have some more questions. You discussed earlier on as well securing remote workers in terms of using the client. People aren't behind the firewall any longer. A couple of things that were mentioned. Is there anything else you needed to add there in terms of making those remote workers secure?
Yeah, you have to train your staff. I think that's so with governance compliance. I think that's also got to be a big factor. If you look at any framework, it's always going to be about your people, processes, and then technology. With people, it's going to be your highest risk still to a network, especially working remotely. We have to train them to the fullest of our current capabilities. So working remotely, have a security awareness training booked for them. But also from a Sophos layer, we do have a strong protection. We actually, like we mentioned, we've got like a full firewall security, like a full UTM and security actuary sitting on the endpoint layer. So we can do only so much, but the end user is still the biggest risk. Yeah. So I always recommend train your staff to the fullest capabilities. One thing that we can do, we can help you guys to run a phishing simulation to your customers. We'll help you guys to build it. We will help you guys. This is like a phishing attack without the bug, like we always try to call it. So it's a simulation. It's not a true phishing attack, but it's more to train your staff what to click on, what not to click on, just as an action point. It's one of our products we do sell, but we use this as a good POC to understand where your staff's education is currently at, and if they need more training, great tool to use. Okay.
And also, Peter, some of those customers that are already using your Sophos products, that simulation capability is built into your software already. You don't have to pay anything for it. You can run them regularly. I know we run them regularly in our business to make sure the users are savvy. There's always one user that makes a mistake along the way. It happens, and it's a good exercise to say, okay, well, go to this URL now and get educated because you made a mistake. And sometimes it's an innocent mistake, but that innocent mistake is what can lead to a crisis in an organization. So that's quite an important part of education, I think, is just running the simulation.
A business millions. So that's why that one mistake is the problem still. We have to rectify it.
And that training. Go ahead, Mark.
Most of the problems, it's an end user problem. Most of the time, they are not educated enough to know, don't click on this, or this is fine, or this is not fine. And those simulated attacks are great. So you can find out who's the weakest link in the company, not to give them a slap on the wrist, just to educate them and say, hey, you got to watch out for these. Don't click on macros. Don't click on, things that don't. If it doesn't look right, it's not right. You didn't win the TV. You didn't win an overseas holiday. You didn't win the UK lottery. Don't click on these things.
No, you're right about that. You're right about that. True.
Also, one thing I just want to add to that. Sorry, Feroz. So one thing on the firewall that you asked, what's the uniqueness behind it? So we actually got a report called UTQ. This is like to understand who's the risky users in the business. I think that's really important to understand as well. So from like what Mark just mentioned, if someone goes and click on, I want applications running, I want, let's say, for example, Skype downloading files that's not supposed to in Dropbox, it goes and creates a risk profile for your users. And based on that, at any point, you can know who's your risky user in the network that you can go and make sure that they get training. That's the most important part for me as well. So the visibility from the XGS and also from the XG firewalls, if you give you that full visibility of the risky users that needs urgent training as soon as possible. Okay, we actually go and build like a bubble. Say, this is the bubble, this is the highest risk, and this is the reasons why. I can actually go through detail. Why does Sophos see them as a high risk? And it might be something that they do off the network that you're not aware of. This will give you full visibility.
Yeah, because you want the client, right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And we didn't discuss IoT at all today. I mean, IoT is a different conversation its own, I think. What is the risk that IT introduces to business or to businesses?
So I was sitting with a journalist about a year back, just before just after lockdown. And one of the questions was, how do we protect business with IoT? Because IoT is a big risk. We were sitting with part of an investigation with a big data center that actually the whole network was also IoT. When we talk about IoT, the air cons, every single thing was an IoT. And currently they actually had a vulnerability. They had an attack, someone came in, with that attack, they decided to switch off all the air cons on the data center, and they had massive problems. So that just gives you an idea. IoT can be a big risk to the business. It depends what it is. Definitely depends what it is. But the one way that we can secure it is put it in its own, it's its own network. Make sure it's between different firewalls, that it can't communicate in or out. Make sure we can block it from doing any communication. And that's something that we can definitely do. We can definitely help and give guidance how to do it.
Okay. All right, good. So at least there is a conversation can be had around that. Barry raised a question. I see Mark has typed it already. Perhaps Mark, you just want to, or should I?
Yes.
You can respond.
Barry was asking about he has fish threat, and he didn't see too many South African based ones. There are a number of them. Just make sure you choose South Africa, and you'll see up. I have seen an ABSA one. You know, the ABSA one where you got to change your bank details. Yes. I have seen that one on there. I've seen a DSTV one on there. There's a couple of South African ones.
So just customize your own if you need to. I think that's also something that you can do. So when you're in a business, you're in the digital industry, and you know that you might get on the, let's say, month end, normally you get a flood of orders, proof of payments, and so forth. So you can go and create your own simulation where you see people who are going to click on, especially in that key time areas, on as a potential risk. And that's what hackers do. They know when is the peak time, especially, for example, SARS. SARS is a great example. Everyone knows SARS is now June, July. They will go and start creating phishing attacks towards SARS because they know everyone will click on it, authenticate, and that's how they get into the networks. So you have to train your people before the hackers doing a phishing attack. You go and create their own simulations.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you. That's good feedback. Just at the end of this session, what I'm going to do, and we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes, I'm going to post what is the most common causes of ransomware attacks in the text session, in the text box. I'll do it shortly. But I've got a question for you as well, Peter, and team as well. Sophos is already a good market leader. I mean, you're really up there, and from a personal experience, we see how it helps our customers. But what is Sophos doing to stay ahead in the security industry? Yeah, definitely. So I must say that's always been a challenge. So always to be seen as innovative and to stay in the lead. So Sophos always got this mindset about where's the market going. Let's the next 2-3 years down the line, and we always try to make ourselves ready. If you look at synchronized security as a concept, there's no other vendor that can do what we do still to this date. And this is one of our biggest uniquenesses, and this is where we see ourselves as true innovators. So we always try to think outside the box, but not just that, is because we've got ethical hackers working for Sophos, we always try to find different ways of what is going to be, because the market's now moving to MSP, the market's moving to public cloud. So most of our investments is all next gen, cloud focused. So we always try to stay ahead of the game with market changes and adaptations that's coming across. And we make the right investment. So Sophos just announced a new acquisition yesterday, actually in the news. We just bought a company called Capsule. They specialize in Linux services, because we know that that's not it's one of our biggest strengths. We always do our best to improve. If we don't have the skill sets, we will normally do an acquisition to make them part of the Sophos family, that we can improve our business. And that's something that we've always been doing the last couple of years. It's been a big success for us, definitely. Because you know what, at the vendor, you can't have all the skills. You can't. Sadly, you have to, most of the time, you have to get the right specialist in that field, and that's exactly what Sophos doing. We'd rather go buy the guys that's upcoming, that knows the market very well, and that's got the right skill. So, because ultimately, if it's Sophos branded, we have to make sure it's a working product, and also that our customers are safe. That's our key. So, in the 13 years, we had one breach that I know about that was successful against Sophos, only one. And that was because of a human element that came across. Let's say to it as well. Normally, Sophos will do their part. I haven't seen a major breakout in the 13 years on Sophos. Even globally, I can't talk for globally, but for SA, I can definitely stipulate it.
Just that we are always ahead of the game, especially in endpoint front. In the ESG, that means our endpoint layer products, we're always leading towards that.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. So I wanna start wrapping up now. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. Maybe last round of questions to be asked, but I want to.
So one thing I love to talk about governance and compliance. POPIA is now in market. I want to make sure that everyone is on the call. Make sure that you're ready for it. They are already knocking on doors. Myself and Lucas, we're much more involved with end customer than always as partners, but we can now see that the regulator for the last 2 months has been knocking a lot of our customers, especially our bigger enterprise customers. They are out there to find fault. So they talk about payouts and talk about fines if you're not compliant. Okay, with POPIA. POPIA, I don't know if there's any questions on POPIA, but the fines I talk about can be between 4 to 8% of the total revenue income, or whatever is greater, or 10 million rand. So if you're in a business that's doing hundreds of millions of rands as a business, you can imagine what your fine potentially can be. So be very careful. It's not something that you should take lightly. If you need us to help or to go through, do like a one-on-one POPI discussion and assessment on where we are at and what we recommend, please do that, because we've been involved with the regulator for many years. So I want to make sure that you guys are ready when they knock on the door, that if you're a Sophos customer or even not a Sophos customer, that you guys are ready to respond to the local regulator. Don't get caught with your pants down, because it's going to cost them money, become a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing that the regulator stipulates, if you lose any information, any data, you've got 72 hours to tell the market about it. If you don't do that, there's imprisonment that will come across, or a massive hefty fine. So if you lose data from now going forward, you have to do your part. If you don't, they catch you on it's in the act not disclosing, it's going to be 10 times worse. Okay. But when you're uncertain about the act, please book a time slot. We can talk about it openly. Okay, we can talk openly to you on a one-on-one basis where you're at currently, and we can definitely help you to improve your posture with governance compliance. So
that's a good launching point for one of my points I have, which is on the POPI side, we've, as First Technology, developed a POPI assessment tool. It's called POPI Check. It's an application that's been launched through the Azure Workplace, which is the Microsoft App Store, if you want to put it that way. Not the one that you get in your notebook, but the one for business applications. It allows you to do a business assessment. It's tailored more towards SMMEs. We do POPI assessments as well for large organizations. In the Microsoft Solution Stack, there's a POPI Compliance Manager, and the whole Microsoft Stack has been built and tailored towards addressing your POPI requirements, as well as it's a global requirement, but there is localized components in it as well. So a call to action there is that if you want to have that conversation, please let us know, inbox me, and I'll be very happy to facilitate that. So just in conclusion from my side, I want to wrap up now. Note I made here, ransomware is a lucrative business, right? I mean, it's quite clear. I mean, 70 million rand, $70 million ransom. I mean, somebody's going to retire with a yacht and a plane, maybe, who knows? But having said that, if you're not in the business of doing ransomware, ransoming organizations, then you need to be ready for it. You know, you need to prepare yourself and your organization so that you can prevent it from happening. I mentioned the POPI toolset as well. Call to action for me is that from the audience perspective, feel free at any time to join us on one-on-one meetings. Give us a call, give me an email, contact Jolene, whoever it is, and let us know. We want to engage with you. We want to have this conversation, walk to walk with you. If it's just information that you need, or if it's a POC that you need, we're able to help. We love the POCs because they prove themselves very effective for customers who find things in the organization which they thought they had secured. And so it highlights a weakness, and the idea is not to prove, yes, we're right, you're wrong. The idea is to say that, well, there is a weakness that something else isn't picking up, and if you don't fix it, you are at risk. So that's what I want to really focus on, and then I want to post the link, which is weird in color there. Oh, there we go. And that's around the what's happening, causes of ransomware attacks. So from my side, I want to thank Peter, I want to thank Mark, Lucas as well for his contribution, and Jolene, who's our marketing manager, for coordinating all of this, and does all the effort in the background and sits silently on the call and help us along. So thank you everybody for your assistance and help, and we look forward to further conversations with the audience. Everybody keep safe and keep well.